Hey, FIBO friends and family, welcome to the FIBO Focus Podcast. I am Sarah Kiriconi, your host, and I am honored to present this monthly FIBO USA series. This informative and energetic podcast will feature trending topics in the industry and deliver educational insights combined with the stories of our invited industry experts and FIBO fam members. Welcome back to FIBO Focus. Today on our podcast, I'm so excited to interview Aryan Fazeli. He is a founder and CEO of K-Nurti supplements. He is also a fellow cancer survivor and has a bachelor's and master's in kinesiology and exercise science. So there is science behind this man's brains and theory. Aryan, thank you so much for being here on this episode.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm excited to chat, and hopefully the listeners get some value out of this.
I have all the faith in the world that there's going to be a lot that we take away. You are a wealth of information and you have quite a journey, which is where I want to start off talking about you recently overcame cancer and going through cancer treatment and therapy. Have you always been healthy before that?
Yeah, so health is one of the things that I've kind of prided myself on early on. I remember, towards my teenage years, I felt like I was not a healthy person. I mean, I like playing sports, but I was overweight and I just didn't necessarily feel good. So it was probably in the ninth grade when I started to research a lot about diet and nutrition. At the time, I used to do martial arts. I was on the national junior karate team. So I was really into sports, but I never really dialed in my nutrition. And so I was always a big fitness advocate, but never really watched what I ate. So when I became a teenager, it started to kind of catch up to me. And that's when I started to really be mindful of what I was eating. I noticed that as soon as I cut out a lot of the sugary garbage, I was having cereal, I was having orange juice, I was having a lot of bread and Nutella, things that typically someone would eat when they're a teenager. But I noticed that I had really great results from just cutting those out, not just energy levels, but my weight as well. I felt better, I looked better. And so going into university, that was the backbone of who I was as a person. Unfortunately, when I started university, I really wanted to become a dentist. And anyone who's tried to get into some sort of professional school, whether it's law or medicine, knows that there's a significant amount of studying and sacrifice involved. So that first year, I found myself turning into a completely different person. I wasn't eating well, I wasn't exercising, and I put on probably about 30 pounds in my first semester. And I didn't really recognize who I was. So up until that point, I'd been healthy my entire life. And then once that point hit, I kind of hit what I would call rock bottom in terms of how I felt as a person. I was depressed. I didn't recognize myself in the mirror, and all those values and morals that I, used to pride myself on were completely out the window. And so that's when I started experimenting with what people know as the ketogenic diet. And fortunately, I was able to get really great results from that in a really short amount of time. And I felt like I was able to take control again over my body and my diet. And so I had a really great transformation. And that's when it kind of sparked my interest in the whole keto diet. Not just keto, but the benefits of removing sugar and, the multitude of ways that you can actually do that. So luckily I was able to get back on track, and leading up to my diagnosis, I was in extremely good shape. I would say that I was in the best shape of my life. It's almost like if it were up to me to pick a point in my life where I would have wanted to deal with a cancer diagnosis, especially something that severe, it would have been exactly when it happened. I'm still 27, but I was 27 at the time, and I was really prioritizing my diet and my fitness. I was spending about 2 hours a day in the gym. I was meal prepping every single day, and so I was investing about 2 to 3 hours a day in my health, which I'm really glad that I did.
It's really fascinating that I'm going to go back to some parts that you were sharing at 9 years old to become aware that you want to change what you're eating. Most 9-year-olds would never have the mindset to do that. So that's admirable, first of all. And then also to delve deeper into that as you got older and you started to say, I really want to change this. Even in teenage years, I'm with you. I had the sugary things too. And I look back and I was like, yeah, those weren't really the best choices, but it's just what we did. But we live and learn. And you used a lot of self-awareness, which I think is key for a lot of people. When you talk about keto diets and diets in general, it's I believe what you're sharing too is it's less about the diet, but more about trial, error, see how you feel. And one of our previous conversations that we had, you mentioned that you credit your recovery with cancer and being so strong through it because of your previous efforts to become healthier. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can dive deeper into the science aspect of it afterwards. But in terms of my personal experience, I was very fortunate to have prioritized my health. I know obviously that has a lot to do with me as a person, my discipline, willpower, uh, whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, there was a lot of luck in what happened to me. Um, and essentially, when I got diagnosed with a rare cancer called a germ cell tumor, specifically a subset called a yolk sac tumor, which is very aggressive. It's very hard to treat. And they essentially give you a 50% survival rate with that. Um, so when I got diagnosed, I remember the tumor was putting so much pressure on my lungs and my heart that my heart rate was through the roof, and my lungs couldn't really keep up. So I felt this sensation of, someone stepping on your chest and you trying to breathe through a straw. I've made that analogy before because it's almost one of the only ways that I can describe the feeling that I had. And this went on for the first few weeks until I started treatment and treatment started to kick in. But early on, one of the symptoms that I had of this tumor growing and putting pressure on my heart was that it had spread into the lining of my heart. And if people are not aware, there's actually fluid in between your heart and the lining around it. And because the cancer had spread, since it was so close, it started to fill up with fluid. And the doctors didn't know that at the time. I had just finished my first round of chemo, and they thought that maybe I had an infection, which is also pretty scary when you have cancer. But I was on an IV and antibiotics and bedridden for about a week. I couldn't sleep. I felt extremely sick, and I didn't know what was going on. And it wasn't until about a week after that they did an EKG of my heart, and they found that there was fluid built up around it, which explained a lot of the symptoms that I was dealing with. And so during the course of those first 3 weeks where I got, my diagnosis, I was put on steroids, I got treatment, and I was bedridden from the side effects, I had lost about, I would say about 40 pounds, maybe more, maybe about 50 pounds. And so what I looked like when I started versus just 3 weeks in was pretty unbelievable. And not just the muscle mass that I had lost. Luckily, I had a good foundation to start with, and that's why I was able to tolerate treatment. And finishing off 50 pounds down, I can't imagine what I would have looked like if I didn't have that 50 pounds of mass to begin with. But the secondary thing to that is once my heart filled up with fluid and they drained it, they told me that my heart rate was around 130 beats per minute at resting, which is about what you would be at after an intense exercise. And my heart was withstanding that for about a week while I was dealing with these symptoms, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. And so they had drained, I believe it was 1.2 liters of fluid out of my heart lining that day. And they had told me that 300 milliliters of fluid is enough to stop the heart from beating because it puts so much pressure on it from doing what it needs to do. And so I basically had 4 times the limit that could kill you in my heart for about a week. And I didn't know what was going on, and I couldn't hear my heart rate because there was so much fluid. It became silent. They called it a silent heartbeat. But I credit not just the muscle mass and my physical shape that I was in going into it, but also my cardiovascular health, which I only started to prioritize in the past few years. I started doing CrossFit and spending more time running, jumping, doing things that would make my heart healthier and not just make me look better physically. And so a combination of being both physically and cardiovascularly fit was a major reason why I survived those first few weeks, and I believe is the major reason that I survived the entire diagnosis altogether. So 100% credit um, what I went through and how I came out of it to what I was going into everything.
And being able to withstand that. And I can't imagine, I'm listening to what you're sharing and I'm taking deep breaths as you're sharing it, because I think, knowing, having that feeling of not being able to breathe deeply, and then also having on top of the pressure on your chest and your heart, it's a really scary situation to be in, for sure. In the lungs, and also the diaphragm lining, and then the heart itself, they're all muscles. So as you're training them, also keeping them fit as organs, that you're absolutely spot on. If you had not done that pre-work, it's like training for the marathon of getting your health back, really. It's really inspiring that, no matter if we're overweight or we're feeling, not the fittest, it's not really about that. It's about the long-term health that we can keep to prevent, or, take us through should we ever have to go through something. It's really, really inspiring. How did
Yeah,
you,
absolutely.
so you went through about how you had your diagnosis, and, you talk about how you changed your, I like to say lifestyle, not a diet, because I try not to think in diet terms, but you changed what you were eating and your diet. And your company that you launched, K-Nutri supplements, where did that come about?
Yeah, for sure. It's really interesting that people will try to attack different diets or types of eating to make theirs seem superior. When at the end of the day, we know what works. We know that cutting out processed foods, refined carbs, and simple sugars is the answer. We see that across any type of diet or lifestyle, whether it's paleo or keto or Whole30, anything that works to improve your health and through that improve your body composition is always done through the removal of refined foods and processed sugars. So for me, I got to the end of my undergrad, and I'll try to keep this short because I could blabber on about it. But I got to the end of my undergrad, and I had gotten accepted into NYU dentistry, which is the school that I wanted to attend. And for me, something just didn't feel right. I felt like I was doing it for the wrong reasons. Um, and so what I decided to do was defer my acceptance for a year, work, and explore some of my other passions. So for me, the passion was the ketogenic diet and nutrition. And so what I decided to do initially was launch a ketogenic nutrition program where I could sell PDF guides and help people lose weight the same way that I did. I had a lot of success with just family and friends. And so, the first 10 transformation pictures and testimonials I had to share were just people around me, whether it was my manager at work, my mom, or my brother. I had a lot of really great transformations from people that I was able to help around me. So I knew that this ketogenic diet worked, and I knew that the principles around it work. And so I wanted to explore how I could share that knowledge with the world to help other people and how I could learn more about it. And so oddly enough, I ran into my professor of nutrition at my restaurant. I was a bartender and server at the time. So I saw him there. I asked him if he was accepting any students for his master's degree. And he said, yeah, just send me an email. So I sent him an email, and the following fall, I started my master's degree. And so I asked him, I know I'm supposed to study this thing that you have lined up for me, but is it okay if I look at the ketogenic diet? Is it okay if I look at the effects of sugar? And he said, yeah, that's totally fine, because our lab looks at obesity and cancer, and we have a lot of links between sugar and how that can play a role in obesity and cancer. And so that kind of sparked everything. And from there, I worked towards launching this supplement company by the end of my degree, which would be about a year and a half ago. And so it kind of, everything lined up perfectly that I graduated, I defended my master's thesis, and I was able to launch the company in the same month. And so I wanted to build it around not just my personal principles, but the principles around removing sugar and using quality ingredients in your diet, which is sort of what we pride ourselves on. All of our products either have zero sugar or maybe 1 or 2 grams from natural sources, but no added sugars, and we use all the ingredients. So I was able to build my company around that, and it's something that I pride myself on, and it's something that our customers get a lot of value out of. The reviews speak for themselves, and people are achieving their health goals. And so for me, I have a deep sense of fulfillment that the things I was able to accomplish through my diet and my lifestyle, I can now share with the world and hope that, God forbid someone ends up in a similar circumstance as me, they're ready to fight. And for me, the experience of going through cancer and beating it has made my mission even stronger, which I never thought would be possible. But I feel so much more passion towards what I'm doing now, because I've proven that it works and it can help you in not just your physical shape, but to ultimately save your life one day, and ensure that you get to live another day.
You came to the realization much faster than I did, that, in some ways cancer can be a gift. It took me many years. As you know, I'm a cancer survivor as well, 16 years. And it took me many years to realize that, oh, this thing that happened, it's actually a gift. And what you share about it fueling your passion to share, to inspire, and to give other people better tools is, it becomes really a part of the integrated weave of what your mission in life really becomes. Something I want to touch on too, you mentioned about sugar and how it fuels cancer. And I remember when I was going through treatment and I read a book that, suggested something, and that was 16, 17 years ago. But one of the scans, and I'm sure you've had a PET scan as well. Yes. It's when they
I,
inject the glucose into you. So that is the simple sugar that you're talking about in the first place. And what it does with the scan is it lights up in your body where it's picked up. And that's exactly, I see you smiling and you're saying this, it's the same thing. It's where it's the sugar will fuel what the cancer is. And at the same time, of course, insulin and diabetes and obesity. So I want to jump and kind of tie those two together, which is a big part of what your product is, what makes it different than other products. Aside from just being a keto diet product, what makes your product different?
so we know the harms of sugar, right? I think it's starting to come into light. If you go into any health food store now, you see products that, even if they're not for someone on a ketogenic diet, they're labeled as ketogenic because they have a good source of healthy fats and they have no sugar in them. So whether you're on a ketogenic diet or not, a lot of keto products can be beneficial for you. And I'm not on a ketogenic diet all year round. I advocate it because I think it's a powerful tool, but maybe it's not for everyone. A lot of people will benefit from paleo. A lot of people will benefit from Whole30. At the end of the day, removing sugar for me is the best thing that you can do. And so when we were looking at our products, we wanted to see how can we maintain ingredients and taste without sacrificing anything added to it. And so one of the best examples is, we launched an energy bar with one of my favorite ingredients, which is collagen protein. And, again, collagen protein has an extensive amount of research behind it in terms of, how it can improve your hair, your skin, your nails, your digestion, your gut health. And there are studies that they'll tag collagen protein and then they'll see that it's actually picked up and absorbed into bone. So a lot of people are skeptical about certain types of protein or certain energy sources, but we like to follow the rabbit hole into research where we know it's going to work. And the research around sugar. So I picked up a few main things from doing my master's degree, and a few of them were basically that sugar and type 2 diabetes is a comorbidity of not just obesity but cancer. And like you said about the PET scan, we see these comorbidities in a lot of cancer patients. And I studied breast cancer specifically, but we see the link, and you can't really doubt it. And we see that exercise increases certain hormones and improves your body composition. And those two things alone are the most important things that you can do outside of treatment to reduce your risk of cancer and improve your likelihood of surviving afterward. So the research is extensive, and it's something that I think people know, but they're not necessarily prioritizing. It seems like you think that it could never happen to you. And I was a healthy person. I never thought that I could deal with the diagnosis. And when it happened, it hit me like a bus. So I can imagine that most people would think this will never happen to me. There's no harm in eating this way, or, how could this possibly cause cancer down the road? So it doesn't become real till it happens.
You say a very valid and important point that, cancer doesn't, it can happen to anybody. And I've always said it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care how much money you're making. It doesn't care what zip code you live in or what kind of job title you have. It can hit anybody. And the best we can do is just waking up every day and, we take care of our bodies and ourselves. What I love that you shared is the two best things that we can do is about movement and reducing the sugar in the diet. It's like it's approachable, it's approachable and it's not overwhelming. You don't have to do a whole list of 30 things in order to be healthy. Yeah, and I think that's important for a lot of listeners too, that it can be approachable and that there are things we can do. It doesn't have to be overwhelming, and you don't have to be 365 doing the same food. That's important that you share that too. Honestly, I'm not always on a ketogenic diet. It's, I do it set here and then you switch it out. You got to find what works for you. And at the end of the day, find a balance, but also, live for the moment, but choose for the future,
Yeah. Yeah, I like the way that you said that. And it's absolutely true. I mean, our PhD student, Chris, he's actually becoming an oncologist now, which is amazing. He found, interestingly enough, is that rats that had an obese adipose profile, so rats that were severely overweight, versus rats that were lean, who still had adipose tissue, even a person with a ripped six-pack has, certain fat on their body. We all do. They released a different hormonal profile, what we call the adiponectin-leptin ratio, but that hormonal profile actually affected tumor growth. So in the lean mice, we found that tumor growth was slowed down, and in the obese, rats, we found that the tumor growth was sped up. So your body composition alone can affect the growth rate of cancer or tumors. And that's something that has been brought to light more recently, but it's not just about, eating healthy or exercising. It's about maintaining that and being consistent because your body composition alone can affect that. And I think, when we're looking at the growth of my tumor, for example, it had grown to the size of a football after about a month. I think they said it was only growing for a month or two. And I saw the scans. I mean, it took up most of my chest in the scans. It was pretty scary. But one thing that I considered, and I could be completely wrong, is that, well, it did grow a lot, but maybe it could have grown more. Maybe it could have spread faster. I mean, there are certain answers that I'll never know, but based on the research alone, I'm pretty confident that I did everything I could to set myself up for success. And when it happened, and my family members were sad and everybody was trying to absorb this information, I kept telling them that I've been training for this my whole life. And now it's kind of a joke, but back then I was dead serious about it. There was no other thing that I could have done to prepare myself for this. And whatever the outcome was, I could look at myself in the mirror and say, hey, you did everything you could.
As humans, that's all we can. And as cancer survivors, it's really, you said it, never ask why. Just do your best every day. Now, I know you're going to be speaking a lot more on this topic and also your passion for the upcoming FIBO event, which will be later this year. Tell me about your involvement with FIBO.
Yeah, so I just came across FIBO pretty recently. We saw some companies in our space that had attended last year. And to be honest, I didn't know much about FIBO until now. I think I had heard the name and associated it with shows that were in Europe in the past, but I didn't know about them in North America. And this is a new concept for us. Again, my company is only a year and a half old. And so this will be our first year attending any trade shows or fitness expos. And so we're attending about 4 this year, and FIBO is one of them that we have lined up. And so being in Miami obviously is going to be amazing. I love Miami. I've been down there for CrossFit competitions in the past, and it's always a great time. There's a real atmosphere of health and fitness that you can feel. I think it's something that comes with the territory of warm weather, but there are good vibes. And I think that, having our company there and being able to meet people, meet companies, and just be around like-minded people will be extremely beneficial. We're an online company out of Canada, so you can imagine that we don't get to meet a lot of people, face to face, and we don't get to attend a lot of trade shows just yet. But I think this year will be a lot different. And FIBO, for me, I think will be very exciting because we do have fitness-oriented products. We have a BCA powder, for example, with electrolytes that a lot of people love using for the gym. And so we have a big community of customers that prioritize fitness. And so being able to meet people like that in real life, I think will be amazing. I'm just a people person in general. It's why I enjoyed serving and bartending for so long, is because I love the human interaction and building those connections. And so I'm excited about FIBO. Again, we had never attended before, never really heard about it. But once I started talking to one of the sales reps, I started to learn more. And then obviously the opportunity to become a speaker came about, and I thought it would be so interesting to get involved with something like that and spread that message to even more people.
FIBO is truly an incredible experience for exactly what you are looking for: to network, to connect, to share with like-minded individuals, and both from a consumer standpoint, because you get so inspired, you can take away and learn so much, but also from a business perspective, how you can reach new markets, learn and network from each other. And I'm Miami based, so I will happily welcome you here. We're bathing suits and fitness gear 365 here. So it's that's why we have the pressure to be fit. I'm teasing a little bit on that part, but it is a big part of the culture that's here, which is why FIBO, chose Miami to be an area to host their event. So I look forward to having you here this upcoming year. I want to jump to your main message is stay focused and be consistent. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's something that when we were, thinking of the branding of the company, we were trying to come up with our logo and our slogan. And I think I was having a conversation with my now fiance and my twin sister, believe it or not. We were having a table conversation about what this brand means to me. And so as I was brainstorming, they basically turned it around on me and said, well, what does it mean to you? What message do you want to spread? And I said, well, I want to help people stay focused on their goals and be consistent with their habits. And so it just hit like a light bulb. It was stay focused and be consistent. And so what I have found across all avenues of life, whether it's business, school, sports, relationships, you name it, if you want to achieve something powerful and you want to be successful at anything, it requires you to stay focused on the task at hand and be consistent over a long period of time. It doesn't matter if you're trying to build an empire or get your PhD, or you want to be, the best player in the NBA. All of those things stem down to staying focused and being consistent. So again, everything I went through kind of reinforced that message because, I would wear, this is on the back here, but I would wear my T-shirt that had our logo and our motto on it while I was in the hospital doing treatment. And so that was a constant reminder for me of why I started everything, where I wanted to take the company, and what I wanted to be about as a person. And so that it's just such a powerful message when you start to apply it to your life. And I think people could find an extreme amount of value out of applying those principles, even into the day-to-day. You'd be surprised how much your life can change when you just take that one thing you want to get better at, and you stay focused on it and you be consistent with your actions.
That's where the results come. One of my favorite lines is motivation gets you there, but it's consistency that makes it a habit. So I really, I am a believer and a liver of that as well. And that's why I might be a little anal with my routines and schedules, but you know what? It gets stuff done. So
it gets stuff done, you're absolutely right.
Aryan, where can we find you?
Yeah, so if you want to connect with me on my personal page, I'm on Instagram at Aryan Fazeli, Ary Fazeli. And if you want to learn more about our company, we're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, at K-Nurti, K-N-U-T-R-I, and that's also our website, knutri.com. We also have our own podcast called the K-Nurti Movement Podcast for people that want to dive a little bit deeper into the health topics that we've covered in the past. But I look forward to connecting, and if anyone has any questions, they can just reach out to me personally, and I'd love to help out.
We'll have all of your links below so people can connect with you, because you are truly a source of inspiration, and takes a strong body, but a stronger mind to go through what you have and to be in the light that you are. So Aryan, thank you so much for your time, your insight, your knowledge, and your life story to share with us here on FIBO Focus Podcast.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the FIBO USA Focus Podcast. We hope you enjoyed hearing from Aryan Fazeli about his journey to health overcoming cancer, the launch of his own science-backed supplement company, K-Nurti, and what you can look forward to hearing from him speaking about at this year's upcoming FIBO USA event in Miami. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the FIBO Focus Podcast, and tell us what you'd like to hear about in the fitness industry. Who knows, maybe we'll interview one of your favorite industry pros next. You can stay up to date with everything about the podcast and our FIBO USA event by following on social media at FIBO USA. Thanks again, and keep an eye out for our episode dropping next month. This is your FIBO Focus Podcast host, Sarah Kirikoni, signing off. Stay fit and stay informed.